The EIA reports that Norway is Europe's largest oil producer, the world's third largest natural gas exporter, and an important supplier of both oil and natural gas to other European countries. All of those sound like some pretty great accomplishments, especially from a country who knighted a penguin back in 2008. That might have been a joke, but Norway's petroleum industry is definitely not. Now, without further ado, my name is Brock Heidel, and along with me is Dustin Ward, Brandon Oye, and Ibrahim Al-Shakar, and we are going to discuss what makes Norway so prominent in the oil industry. Today we are going to talk about Norway's oil industry history, oil production, natural gas, sector organizations, hydropower, and offshore exploration.
The history of Norway's petroleum industry. In 1971, Norway struck oil when an American oil company called Phillips Petroleum found Ekofisk, one of the largest offshore oil fields ever discovered. The oil industry was booming in Norway until 1980 when an oil rig located in the North Sea called the Alexander L. Kielland capsized, killing 123 workers. Although the disaster was tragic, it led to the development of more safety precautions in the Norwegian oil industry. Oil production reached its peak when they discovered their last big oil field in the Norwegian Sea called Ormen Lange. This oil field put Norway oil production over the top. Ormen Lange is Europe's third largest oil field and is an important part to Norway's 40-year production of oil. Norway's oil production. Norway is the largest producer of oil and gas in Europe, and nothing could be more significant in Norway's oil production than the North Sea and Barents Sea. Ekofisk was discovered in the North Sea and is also one of the largest offshore oil fields discovered in Norway, as I said earlier. Ekofisk produces 110,000 barrels a day and is used to be the leading producer of oil in the North Sea, but since its constant use for the last 40 years, its production has declined and another oil field has surpassed its production. This oil field is known as Troll oil and gas field. Troll oil field was discovered in 1979 and produces 122,000 barrels a day and is the leading offshore oil field producer in Norway. Grain is also a large producer of oil in the North Sea, producing 95,000 barrels a day. The Barents Sea is also significant in Norway. Its largest oil field is called Goliat, which produces 93,000 barrels a day. These two seas are key factors to Norway's success in the oil industry. Norway's exports and oil decline. Almost all of the oil being shipped out of Norway stays in the continent of Europe. Almost half of Norway's exports travel to the United Kingdom, 21% of it to the Netherlands, and 10% to Germany. Norway exports about 1.19 million barrels a day, and only 8% of it travels out of Europe. This is where Norway makes all of its profit. Although Norway is the leading producer of oil in Europe, it does not mean that it is increasing in oil production. In fact, Norway is on a slight decline in oil production in the last 10 years. In 2001, Norway was producing 3.4 million barrels of oil per day. In 2013, it only produced 1.8 million barrels per day. This major decline in oil production could severely hurt Norway's economy.
Norway was the third largest exporter and sixth largest producer of natural gas in 2011 and 2012 and had 74 trillion cubic feet of natural gas reserves as of January 1st of this year. Norway's natural gas production has increased nearly every year since 1993, with only two declines, once in 2011 and the second in 2013. Although Norway produced 103.4 million metric tons of natural gas in 2012, the country only consumed 3.9 million metric tons. Norway exported 3.8 trillion cubic feet of natural gas in 2013, which amounts to 96% of its total gas production of that year. Nearly 20% of Europe's natural gas consumption consists of Norwegian natural gas exports. Nations that imported the most natural gas from Norway in 2013 include the United Kingdom, the Netherlands, Germany, France, Belgium, and Italy. The vast majority of Norway's natural gas exports are transported via pipelines that lead directly into the United Kingdom, Germany, Belgium, and France. 4% of Norway's exported natural gas is transported via liquefied natural gas tankers. Norway's Ministry of Petroleum and Energy oversees all of its energy resources and is advised by the Norwegian Petroleum Directorate. The Norwegian Petroleum Directorate also administrates petroleum exploration and production on the Norwegian continental shelf. Over 50 companies are involved in petroleum infrastructure, exploration, and production in Norway, including Shell, ENL, ExxonMobil, ConocoPhillips, and Total. Reduced taxes and government subsidies on oil and gas exploration attract such companies. 70% of the country's oil and natural gas production is controlled by government-owned company Statoil. Norway's government also owns Petoro, the company responsible for managing its commercial interests in petroleum and related operations. Gasled, a joint venture between Statoil, Petoro, and several other companies to own the natural gas transport infrastructure, is managed by state-owned company Gassco.
Now we're going to talk about hydropower and its effect on how Norway handles its oil and natural gas. First, I just want to start out with some statistics. 97% of Norway's electricity is produced from hydropower. They are sixth in most hydropower electricity produced, and they are one of the only countries to have more than half of its overall energy from hydropower. What does this mean for the oil industry? If we look at this graph, we see that Norway only consumes about 10% of its overall oil production, and although they are the largest oil producer in Europe, this is still very surprising. The fact that they rely so heavily on their hydropower allows them to export an abundant amount of their oil produced. Next, Norway has set up a hydropower system that involves themselves, Sweden, Denmark, Finland, and the Netherlands, and is shown on the bottom left. This system, although localized to the area, shows that hydropower is spreading and renewable resources could become more prominent in our energy search. Although it works well for Norway, if every country were to follow in their footsteps, the oil industry would take a back seat to these renewable resources.
The North Sea. The majority of Norway offshore oil production is from the North Sea. There are many factors that show great opportunities in the North Sea, such as the discoveries and the development that happened in the last few years both in the Norwegian and the British regions. The biggest 6 fields of oil in the Norwegian water in the North Sea are Ekofisk, Snor, the Valhall, the Hedron, Eldfisk, and Grain, respectively. There are many Norwegian discoveries in the North Sea. The NBT projected that Johan Sverdrup to hold 1.8 billion barrels of oil equivalent. The Barents Sea. The Barents Sea has one of Europe's last huge and pure marine ecosystems. It supports the life of the most numerous colonies of seabirds, such as puffin and guillemot. As a result, the Norway offshore oil production stopped from 2001 until 2004. The exploration continued in 2005. They are still uncertain whether the production of oil will harm the environment or not. So even when the oil production was resumed, it was not as much as it was expected to be. There is an American geologist survey which shows that Arctic waters have 25% of undiscovered hydrocarbon stores. The Norwegian government, along with other petroleum countries, cannot resist this huge opportunity. The government said, "We believe the Barents Sea could represent a new petroleum province for Europe."
Okay, just at the high points of what we talked about today, we saw that Norway first started producing oil in 1971 in the Ekofisk oil field. Their production has decreased gradually since 2001, but they are still the largest producer in Europe. Natural gas production has increased almost every year for the last 20 years. Norway has been encouraging outside company participation by reducing taxes and subsidies on exploration. Hydropower produces 97% of Norway's electricity and allows them to export a lot of their oil and natural gas. And finally, we saw that the North Sea has proven itself productive with at least 6 major oil fields, while the Barents Sea has not proven itself yet, but it still looks very promising for the future. I hope you learned a lot about Norway's petroleum industry today, and thanks for watching.